Welcome to the Sentinel Report. Alex Newman, your host here. Folks, a huge thing happening all across the country, and that is the proliferation of legislation trying to bring gold back into prominence, not just within states, but even in commerce and private business. Texas has been a leader on this, and so has the state of Utah. In fact, not long ago, we had the state treasurer of Utah on this program, Marlo Oaks, who's been very supportive of this effort. And the state passed a historic bill, actually one of the strongest bills we've ever seen, by a very significant margin. Even some Democrats came along, and one of the men who was key to that whole effort was Representative Ken Ivory. He joins us today to discuss. Ken, thank you very much for joining us on the program today. You guys had a great bill, passed with a very significant margin, and then Governor Cox vetoed it. What's going on?
Yeah, Alex, first of all, thanks for having me on. Big surprise, was my bill. Last year I passed the bill that allowed us to invest gold in the rainy day fund into gold, and that's done quite well over the last year. And then this year it was to allow vendors to choose, at their choice, to be paid in electronically gold-backed payment system for vendors to choose to be paid in gold and silver. And passed the House unanimously, passed the Senate, every Republican and some Democrats, and so we thought, we're home free, no problems here. And 10 minutes before the deadline to veto bills, I get a call from his attorney with some excuses, and so it's impracticable. Well, there are at least half a dozen companies doing it that we know of, and then they had some concerns. They thought that since it was funded by someone on the Precious Metal Study Group, because we didn't think that there would be a massive appropriation needed, because it's like adding a new bank account, and at the last minute we got a $200,000 appropriation fiscal note tied to it, and we were already done with appropriations. So Kevin Freeman and his companies agreed to put up the money wanting open competitive bid, but the governor assumed that because it was someone privately putting up the money that it would somehow interfere with the competitive bid process, but nothing could be further from the truth. So now we're working the veto override process, Alex, and that should go fine. We'll let you know how it goes.
Excellent. Looking forward to it. Ken, I want to talk about the big picture here, and we've spent a lot of time with Kevin, who's been pushing for this at a national level with his book, Pirate Money. Why do you think it's important for states to take these kinds of actions to try to get gold back into circulation, to get it moving through the economy once again?
Yeah, great question. First of all, we're mandated to do that. Article 1, Section 10 of the U.S. Constitution says, no state shall make anything but gold and silver, legal tender and payment of debt. And so we're trying to follow that. The temporary experiment that President Nixon launched in 1971, he said he was temporarily taking the dollar off of gold. It was backed by gold up until then. Well, that's not worked out so well. They've been printing money like crazy, devaluing our money something like 80-85% since 1971. We simply want people to be able to store the value of their earnings and savings so they can buy houses, so they can afford groceries and not have the value of their money eroded out from under them.
Yeah. And so Texas, of course, set up a state gold bullion depository, and they have legislation now. It hasn't passed yet as of the last time I checked, but they have a system that they want to build that would kind of make this transactional. So you'd get like a debit card, and you'd be able to just buy or sell using gold and silver through this mechanism. Is that something that the folks in Utah are interested in looking at as well?
Yeah, well, that's exactly what the House Bill 306 does. We started on the making gold legal tender again in 2011, and then we eliminated tax in 2014. We've kind of been leading out on this all the way through. Last year, we were the first state to authorize being able to invest rainy day funds directly in gold. And then this year, House Bill 306 does that very thing. So it would be an electronic gold-backed payment system. Think of kind of like Bitcoin, but actually backed by physical gold and silver, so that vendors could, at their choice, choose to be paid in gold and silver, and then they'd have the ability to transact that anywhere else. But the gold would be vaulted in Utah, audited, insured, redeemable for physical precious metal or for dollars. And so, yeah, that's where House Bill 306, the bill that we passed, that's where it's going.
Yeah, and you guys brought in some really heavy hitters for your working group. You had, I think, the CFO of one of the major credit card companies. You guys brought in some really brilliant minds for this. Talk about the process that went into crafting this bill.
Yeah, so when we passed House Bill 348 last year that authorized the investment of rainy day funds in precious metals, we also set up in that bill a study group. And so Marlo Oaks, our treasurer, ran the study group. And, as you mentioned, we had Randy Quarles, who was the vice chair of the Federal Reserve. Gary Crittenden was CFO of Citigroup and also of American Express. Kevin Freeman, of course, was on there. We had Luke Groman come in and give some advice and questions to the group. Our Bankers Association, Mining Association, Senator Lee's office, senators, House members, governor's office had people on there. And yeah, we studied this throughout the year, and the report came out in November. And at the end of the day, there was a little bit of a difference of opinion as to what is happening with the dollar, whether the dollar was in trouble or not. But everyone was united on whether you think the dollar's in trouble or not, people deserve choice. And under the Constitution, where it dictates to us that we shall make gold and silver legal tender, that everyone deserves choice in how they store the value of their earnings and savings. And that was unanimous out of that study group.
Yeah, and that doesn't seem all that controversial, honestly. I'm not surprised you guys were even able to get Democrats.
It was controversial with our governor, but pretty much not anyone else.
Right, yeah, it's amazing. Ken, I want to turn to the national situation for a moment. Obviously, gold has really been in the news a lot lately between Fort Knox and questions about whether the gold's really there, and Elon Musk talking about a live-streamed audit, and President Trump saying we're going to go see what's going on there. What do you see happening at the national level with gold? I mean, Trump in the past has been supportive of returning to a gold standard. He's been very vocal about these issues. Is something important happening at the national level? Are we seeing kind of like a awakening or a reawakening on this issue?
Yeah, we sure hope so, Alex. President Trump 45, his nominee to the Federal Reserve was Judy Shelton. By the way, University of Utah, master's and PhD grad. I want to give a shout out there. But she was his nominee to the Federal Reserve, and as you likely know, she was calling for a gold-backed bond, where we issue bonds in gold, sound money, and then you can tease out in the market, let the market play out. Do we want to bet 50 years on a return on gold, or do we want to look at a return on dollars 30 years out, 50 years out? And that's a pretty easy story. You go back 30 years on the value of the dollar, and it's been dropping like a rock. For example, I'll give you an example. In 1971, when President Nixon took us temporarily off the gold standard, you could buy a house in Salt Lake for under $20,000 or 560 some odd ounces of gold. Today, that house is $560,000. The $20,000 doesn't get you a down payment, right? But that 560 ounces of gold buys you more than 3 houses. Wow. So I mean, gold holds its value, and we believe people should be able to choose how they store the value. I mean, that's the essence of liberty. I mean, think about this, Alex. You go to the butcher and you say, hey, I want a pound of hamburger. And he comes back with a thimble. And you say, no, I wanted a pound, right? Oh, yeah, that's a pound today. We changed what a pound is. And you go to get a house, you go to your architect and contractor and say, I want a 3,500 square foot house. And when you go to get the keys, it fits in the back of your pickup. And you say, wait a minute. Well, no, we changed what a foot is. A dollar was a fixed standard, 31 and 371 and a quarter grains of silver. That was the definition of a dollar. And in the Constitution, it's right in that provision of a fixed standard of weights and measures. So we can measure the economy. We measure our labor. We have a fixed way, a trusted way to transact with each other instead of dollars that are dropping through the floor because they have these inflation targets, which just simply means they're taking away that percentage of the value of our money. And, the Constitution didn't countenance that, and we think we need to get back to that standard and give people that choice of sound money.
Amen. So where do you think we should go as a nation from here? I mean, obviously states can do a lot, but some has to be done in Washington, D.C. Where do you think we ought to head as the United States of America?
Yeah. States getting back to Article 1, Section 10 and getting back to the Constitution, states can surely do that. But somewhere along the line, after 1971, when before that gold was money, the IRS, as a matter of policy, made it a policy that gold and silver used as money should be taxed. And they're taxing money and taxing get this, they're devaluing the dollar so that when gold just standing still is worth more dollars because the dollar's devaluing, the IRS policy is to tax that difference in value. We think that's unconscionable, and that capital gain tax on gold as money should go away. We call, President Trump could get the IRS to do that. Otherwise, we need to look at ways that the states get together and work with our federal partner to eliminate that capital gain taxation of money, because it's absurd to tax people's money.
Yeah, it really is. And so we've got hopefully a veto override coming up here. What's next in Utah? You guys have do you have new legislation you're thinking about for the next session, or is this kind of a stopping point for a little bit?
Yeah, no, I mean, Alex, gold is Utah's #1 export. It's also our #1 import, because we've got the refineries and all of the rest. It's a critical industry for us. We're a leader in fintech, financial technology. I had a couple of other bills this year that we rolled out, and we'll work on those in the study group going forward. One was to begin building kind of an inflation insurance, where we begin to stockpile an income in gold. And then the other was to give some tax incentives for mining companies, and particularly rare earth strategic element companies that also mine precious metals, and give them an incentive for paying their taxes in gold and silver. And again, that builds a gold income for the state, so the state potentially down the road could look at gold-backed bonds in the state, and again tease out that sound money where the market would choose long-term investments in gold over treasuries that lose value over time.
Yeah, it is really exciting, Ken. We're almost out of time, but I do want to ask you, most of our viewers, most of our listeners are not in Utah. And so what's your advice to folks in other states who are hearing this and are thinking, hey, that'd be a great idea for Florida or Washington or California? How did they get this discussion started in their state? How did they get their lawmakers working on these issues?
Yeah, a couple things. I mean, you can look up the legislation I've done. If you go to le.utah.gov, you can search my name and see the legislation that I've done here and in prior years. So that would be one. A second way, Alex, is we're actually teaching people how to reclaim their role as the sovereign in America, as the servant leaders, where we exercise our role at the top of the food chain in the government, and we teach our leaders how to represent us and teach them the direction and the job description we need them to do. And that's a website called igovern.us, igovern.us, and we're teaching people how, if we band together, we can reclaim our role as the sovereign, as the boss, the servant leader in this government in as little as 5 minutes a week. We just work together. It's really not that hard, but this is not a spectator sport. We need to be in the game, know who our state leaders are, know how to influence them, and that's what we're doing at that igovern.us site.
That's fantastic. Yeah, Utah, maybe not the biggest state, but huge in terms of influence and leadership, and we appreciate you guys very much. Ken, before we go, final thoughts, and is there any way for folks to follow you? Are you on Twitter, X, social media, Facebook, whatever, so that people can follow what you guys are doing in Utah?
Yeah, you bet. Twitter is Ken Ivory UT, Facebook, LinkedIn, those things as well, and website voteivory.com. But yeah, reach out. This is critical. It's critical that we reclaim the ability to permanently store the value of our earnings and savings, and reclaim that constitutional structure in our nation. So we'll reach back out to you when we get the override done, and love to talk to you more about this igovern.us at some point.
Would love to. Ken, thank you so much for what you're doing. Thank you very much for joining us today. I hope we can talk to you again very soon.
Thanks, Alex. My pleasure.
All right, folks, stay with us. We're going to be right back with more here on the Sentinel Report.